during the incredibly rapid fire 45 days, try going up to the Hill. It's not, you say meetings behind closed doors, most of those doors are open, and you can go and sit in and listen to Health and Human Services or another committee meeting of your choosing, and it can be fascinating.
Yeah.
It's remarkably accessible to the average person who wants to be involved. I want to continue to be at the table in an official capacity for Salt Lake City District 5 in our state level conversations about homelessness.
All right. Happy Halloween. We got one person in the room who dressed up today, and kind of my daughter's dressed up, and I'm not dressing up. I wish I could, but I don't have time. But with me on the program is Amy Hawkins, and I got to know you through your work on the community council of the Ballpark district. You're on the board of Solutions Utah. You've gotten yourself pretty involved in local community issues. How and why did you initially get into caring about your community?
Sure, I think I might have even told you this story before 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
but very soon after I moved to the Ballpark neighborhood in 2014, it became clear that there was a drug house across the street. Dealing was just happening at all times of the day and night, and we were getting woken up by some loud bass coming into the neighborhood at 3 and 4 a.m. It was really clear that there was regularly domestic violence happening at that address, and lots of folks in the neighborhood were calling the police. But a good neighbor distributed some neighborhood watch flyers. We all got together at his house, and we talked to our community liaison officer from the Salt Lake Police Department and sort of formalized the neighborhood watch. And a few months later, there was about a 6 or 8 hour long raid that took place at that house, and it's very good that it happened. It probably prevented something worse happening in the immediate area. And this was back when the Salt Lake Police Department published a blotter and like an incident of the day, and we were the incident of the day. And there were reports of not just drug dealing, but drug manufacture, stolen weapons, stolen
Wow.
vehicles.
They were cooking meth in there?
It's
Possibly.
not specified, but we believe so.
Mm-hmm.
And also an unregistered sex offender. And so soon after that, I circulated a petition in the neighborhood because they were not the property owners; they were renters. The property owner was a sitting city council member from North Salt Lake.
Mm.
So we wrote it to his home address via certified mail and said, we really appreciate that you care about your community because you yourself are elected. This is really creating an unfortunate situation on our block. Would you please evict these folks? And here's a copy of the police report.
Wow.
So they moved out or were evicted. But once that happened, it really changed the way the block felt. Like all of a sudden, you didn't have to be looking over your shoulder all the time or worrying about what was going to happen across the street. And that was really empowering. Like the neighborhood came together and made a positive change through calling and being persistent and alerting people this was a problem. We all signed this petition together, and it made me think like, well, what else can we do to make positive change here? And cool. And that's how that started.
That's great. And all politics begins in your backyard.
In our case, it was our front yard, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I struggle with the concept of getting people to care about local politics because it's not as talked about or sexy as interesting as talking about how much you hate Donald Trump or hate the Democrats in Congress or hate
Please, neighborhood byways are incredibly sexy. Please, come on, give me some credit. Nothing is sexier than pedestrian infrastructure.
Yeah, jaywalkers. Let's call the police on all the jaywalkers.
I'm not worried about the jaywalkers. I'm worried about the people who don't yield. to people
Oh yeah,
walking or biking
they
across the
yeah
intersection.
yeah those people
Those are
suck too.
those people suck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the jaywalkers, they absolutely incite the vehicle traffic to hit them. I guess you're either
I'm
on the
just
side
gonna
of the jaywalkers or
I'm
you're.
gonna let you bury yourself there. I don't need to help you. Do you want another shuffle?
Yeah, well, I'm a jaywalker, so I just don't see a problem with it, actually.
I too subscribe. Oh,
Okay, first question.
Zane asked, why did you sell the stadium? Why are we allowing historical buildings to be torn down into apartment complexes?
Oh, I love the question. Zane asked, why did we sell the stadium? Why are we allowing apartments to or historical buildings to be torn down for apartments?
those are definitely two separate questions.
Yeah,
And love to tell Zane, we haven't sold the stadium yet. We still own it. And I take it we mean Smith's
I'm
Ballpark,
gonna move
right?
this.
Smith's Ballpark still
Not sold.
it is not sold. There's a community event happening there in about 20 minutes.
So that's I think it's a good way to get into that topic because that is the district which you are running for city council.
You bet.
That is the big piece of property everybody's wondering about. What is going to happen? The mayor said it will be shovel ready as soon as the bees move out.
Yes, she said that in January 2023.
January 23, and we are now in almost November 2025. Where are the shovels?
The shovels haven't shown up yet, but we do still have the stadium. So
And it's
we,
mostly just going to be empty now. Or is stuff going to happen there, or what's going to become?
so, a little unknown. We know that there's been a long community engagement process, right? Ballpark Next. And I think that took two distinct phases, right? There was the contest that the mayor announced again in January 2023, saying, like, we want to hear your ideas.
I saw the ideas. They're awesome
The
ideas.
the ideas were totally awesome.
Yeah, out of the architecture program in the University of Utah, we stumbled into the reception dinner for the winners, and it was fantastic. Um,
Well, there were three levels of competition, right? There was the resident generated idea, there was the student generated idea, and then there was the sort of industry generated idea. And so I believe, I haven't thought about this in a while, but there was the like women's specific sport stadium idea. There was a sort of mixed use concept that came from the students, and the citizen led idea. I can't remember if this was the winner, if it was just one I liked a lot for like a giant geocitic dome, indoor, you know, plants all the time, like a
yeah.
giant, a
What
giant
what was that called?
greenhouse.
Earth Dome in the 1980s when they did the experiment of all the people inside of the dome for a
I,
year.
you mean Biosphere One
Biosphere.
and
There you
Biosphere
go.
Two?
So glad you've got a better memory than
I
me.
drove by it once, and I was privately thrilled. Oh my gosh, it's Biosphere! It still exists.
That was the coolest thing to keep it tabs on during the 80s growing up. And then I think something bad happened with the water or the
I think they
plants.
couldn't make enough food. I think everybody was kind of at a caloric deficit for a couple years,
Yeah.
and it's not, if you're going to hang out with the same 6 or 8 people for a couple years while you're all on like an extreme diet, social situations aren't going to go super well.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably want to get out of there.
So we
But
elected to not do the
no
biosphere
biosphere? Ah,
model for the
dang.
ballpark stadium. So another big win
Shoot.
for community engagement.
So so nothing's happening anytime soon? Is that the
We don't know about any structural changes that are on their way yet, which I think is kind of cool because the stadium, we had private folks do a structural analysis of the stadium. It was built in 1994, and it was built to last 50 years. And the structural analysis showed, like, yeah, actually this thing's in pretty good shape.
so
It could
definitely
definitely
we should
last
not tear
another.
it down,
We
right?
shouldn't tear it down just for the sake of tearing it down.
Yeah.
Um, the proposal that the neighborhood came to, um, or of the three options that were later delivered to us by private companies. There were three options that we were given. One, tear down the stadium completely. Two, adaptive reuse. And three, preserve the stadium in its
Well,
entirety.
this is my idea. Have you heard of the Savannah Bananas?
I have, in fact, had the pleasure of attending a Savannah
Well, why
Banana
don't we get
game.
our own Savannah Bananas for Salt Lake and just use it as a stadium?
I would be thrilled by that. I had the best time
Yeah,
at that
it
game.
looks like it's
It was
so much fun.
amazing. There might be some like copyright trademark issues in that
Well,
space.
they expanded the league, and I wonder if we could have a team. Like, why not have another team? I'm sure there's a reason why not, but I would love that.
It was pretty fun. Not
Yeah,
gonna lie. That was a good game.
yeah.
Sold
So
out too. Sold out like months in
it's
advance.
crazy. That whole idea and concept is blown up, and they're selling the tickets for a lot of money. I mean, it's not like amateur prices anymore. But this kind of brings me to the problem I see here in Salt Lake City. We've got the billionaires with their dreams, right? The entertainment district for where the Delta Center is and going up the First South toward Abravanel Hall. Ryan Smith has some big ideas. And then I just hear, yeah, let's do it. Sounds awesome. And then the same goes for the Power District with the Miller plans to put a Major League Baseball stadium down there. But I'm not hearing what we're going to do to solve the affordable housing problem. I think if you talk to the average working class Utahn or Salt Laker, and you ask them, what's the biggest problem you have right now? It's like the cost of groceries, the cost of housing. How am I going to feed my cat this month? So what's up with this, just doing whatever the billionaires want now, right now?
I'm also really worried about healthcare, right? With everybody's affordable care plans skyrocketing in price. That's another area that's going to be
Yeah,
really scary.
yeah, it's a problem.
The bankruptcy rates in America that are associated specifically with medical care.
Yeah.
It's
The people go bankrupt because they get a debilitating disease. I don't think if there's anything we could be able to solve in the United States, you would think that would be the major issue. We could figure that out.
We've been working on that since both you and I have been paying attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was President Bill Clinton's whole deal. That was President Obama's whole deal.
Yeah.
Like
That Obamacare didn't solve that for some reason. It's still a problem. But do you think that the billionaire class should be guiding the ships of where we're going as a city? And how do we take control of our city again? How do we say, no, it's affordable housing? We need that.
I think we're talking about market problems and sort of non-market problems. And I also don't know. I suspect that there are billionaires that are out there who we don't villainize, right? That we don't.
And I'm
we
not
don't.
villainizing. I think it's a cool idea. Like, I'm not disparaging the ideas that they have.
Mhm.
I think they're cool ideas. Like, I love the renderings. I love
They are very
renderings.
cool.
Yeah, it looks it looks like I'll have a blast, floating down the Jordan River and then ending up at a ballpark and, putting my boat off to the side and going to a game. That sounds awesome.
I would like to join you when that happens. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah,
I didn't
but
know you have a boat.
I've got a little inflatable boat. Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah. But so I just don't see these problems, these major problems, housing and homelessness being solved at the city council level. You follow it much better than I do. What is meaningful? What meaningful changes are happening that are going to address and solve these big problems?
This isn't at the city council level, but as of a couple years ago, maybe not even that, a couple years ago, we got a housing czar. Once we get a czar, we know we have a real problem worth solving, right?
Yeah.
So Steve Waldrop is our state level housing czar.
He's
And
been on this program. Yeah. It
excellent.
was amazing.
You should have listened.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
really happy to have him on.
So I probably don't need to reiterate his points, but
No, do for our listeners.
one of the places that he and I have a lot of overlap is being concerned about homeownership rates dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Both sets of my grandparents were working class. Like
Mm-hmm.
you know, they worked at the GM factory and in the armed forces and in the tobacco fields and then at the fabric factory. Like I don't think it gets more working class than those
Yeah, that's
kinds of
working class.
jobs, right?
Blue collar.
But they both sets had their own homes. So when they got older, you didn't need to worry, you had to worry about property tax and medical costs and things like that, but they didn't have to worry about paying rent, affordable or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really does concern me that nationally, homeownership rates are declining, and we see that here in Utah too. And in the Ballpark neighborhood, which is where I live in Salt Lake City, District 5, the rates of home ownership versus renter occupied homes, it's about 80-20. That's that ratio concerns me. It's certainly not reflective of the city overall, but I think it.
And how much did that increase in the last 10 years, that percentage?
I think that stayed relatively stable. You have to go back a few decades before you get to see major changes there. But I agree, like, of the housing that's being built in our neighborhood, it's not ownership opportunities.
Yeah, it's
rental.
apartments.
Yeah.
And, one thing I saw, I talked to a guy, gosh, I wish I could remember his name. Anyway, he's a real estate guy. He pointed out that when there was a housing shortage, I think it was back in the early 70s, the major initiative was to create more RV parks because that is the most affordable housing, prefabricated, plopped on a concrete pad, get your double wide, basically plug and play, and you're all set. That was the solution to the housing affordability problem. Nobody's talking about prefabricated homes. Nobody's talking about trailer parks.
Well, actually, your colleagues at the Other Side Academy are.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Except
if you look,
except them who did it,
and who are doing it right now
Yeah.
on First South.
And I'm stoked to see it because that is the model, I think. If you just say, hey, here's a pad, it's got sewer, it's got water, it's got electricity, build to suit, or get it built order it on eBay, and it'll be shipped to this location. It could be a really cool looking tiny home. And as we see from the tiny home village, that's exactly what they got. Really cool little cozy little tiny houses. And so why aren't we doing that? Like, why isn't that being copied and pasted in more places? $130,000 per unit.
I agree. It's super cool. I've been out there several times. It's awesome. And the prefab housing that I was referring to is more dense stuff that's going up on First South,
stacked up,
the prep school.
Yeah, that's really cool too.
It is also really cool, but again, it's going up faster than anything I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I got to drive past that. I saw the day before they were going to start doing it, and I saw them stacking at Sears Lake all of the prefab units, and I just talked to those guys this morning, Dave and Tim, and it's like, what a cool idea. I mean, and they said their unit costs are $200,000 per unit. The Magnolia apartments were $380,000 per unit.
They might have been slightly lower than that, but I know
maybe 360.
You're in the ballpark. Yeah.
So it's like I believe there are solutions out there. I just believe that there's just, for some reason, not the political will. And I think that's a proof that there's a disconnect between the voters and the elected officials, don't you?
Yes, and also to what I think we're talking about, marketplace-driven solutions, subsidized solutions that are subsidized from the public space, and then entirely publicly funded solutions. And those are sort of three buckets that don't necessarily overlap a lot.
That's true.
Or, speak to each other a lot. But I think you're talking about a really real problem.
Market-based solutions, I think, are what the government could facilitate.
Yeah, that's what I want to see in terms of denser housing opportunities in Salt Lake City, because that's where I'd say, like, the tiny home community is great. I look forward to seeing it when it's 400, 450 tiny homes. but it's not necessarily a model of, density, right? And
No.
they also had to build it on top
And
of a
that's what
former
makes it so,
landfill.
that's what makes it so inexpensive though. Density is expensive.
I know.
Yeah, you start stacking those units on top of each other, you got to do engineering and seismic deals with our earthquakes here, and um,
And you have to ask yourself, do you want to invest in so much density that you're building something other than what we call a 5/2, right?
what's 5/2?
Um, two two floors of parking and then 5 floors of housing
Oh,
on top of that. It's usually like I forget what they call it, but like a big block and
yeah.
then another block on top of it.
Mm.
You have probably seen some 5/2s.
Oh yeah.
You can think about them in the city
Yeah.
that have gone up in the past 5 to 10 years.
And that is the model. It's like that's what you see all up and down North Temple there, and a lot of that housing is getting subsidized because people apply for these affordable housing grants that I don't call a studio apartment for $1,200 deeply affordable housing.
I know.
It's like they got money from the city and state to call it deeply affordable housing, but if it's $1,200 or $1,500, I mean, how are they able to call it deeply affordable
I
still?
mean, I think you're asking that as a rhetorical question, but I think you probably know the legitimate answer, right? It's based on AMI, area median income,
Yeah,
and a certain percentage of that needs to be able to go towards rents. Different income levels qualify. Some housing is dedicated for 50% AMI, 80% AMI. Deeply affordable is considered 30% AMI or below.
yeah, which
But
is better than, I guess, nothing at all. But
I think it's better than nothing at all. But I don't see any of those people getting to the place where like my grandparents were at, where then they could
exactly,
pay that rent
yeah,
and then also simultaneously save for emergencies or, God forbid, like a down payment
yeah.
somewhere.
Whereas if you
Where's,
owned the tiny home and
yeah,
a lot that it sits on, you could be building equity, right? If that could be a model where we just pass a zoning ordinance where instead of an eighth of an acre lot being the average size, we make it a tenth of an acre or 12th of an acre, 15th of an acre, something that's more manageable in terms of the down payment and the monthly mortgage.
hmm
I just, so Steve Waldrop, I just asked him, why won't banks finance it? And he said, that's the biggest problem. Banks will not finance tiny homes. And I'm like, well, why not?
hmm
And because it doesn't follow any traditional models. And so, yeah, I don't know, use the power of the
right,
political power to make it happen. It's just
exactly.
that.
Figure out an incentivization structure so
Hmm.
that we can make some of these experiments work enough so that banks then will subsidize, right?
Yeah.
On a more consistent basis. And I know that I'm sure that there's going to be stuff to work out there, but that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We need to build capital towards that solution.
And I think the only way that's going to happen if we have more community banks, because I don't see Wells Fargo or KeyBank or Chase actually caring about giving people tiny mortgages on their tiny homes. But
But
if we had more
maybe,
community
yeah,
banks,
maybe Zions will, right?
well, they're not exactly community bank either. We talked to a bank this week. That's why I'm thinking about it. A new bank called Redemption Bank, who just bought out the Holiday Bank and Trust in Holiday, and it's pretty cool what they're doing. They want to do small loans. They want to do less conventional loans. They want to help small mom and pop businesses. So I shout out to Redemption Bank and Trust and Holiday. It used to be Holiday Bank and Trust. But I want to ask you, what is the major issues for you within your power and your sphere of influence if you are elected to District 5 that you want to fight for?
I want to be at the table. I already have the privilege of having made a space at the table a little bit, but I want to continue to be at the table in an official capacity for Salt Lake City District 5 in our state level conversations about homelessness. Anybody can attend our Utah Homeless Services Board meetings. They supposedly happen quarterly. They don't. They happen like once every other
Yeah.
month. Those people are
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot of work for a volunteer board.
Yeah.
But that conversation is happening and shifting fast. And I've been part of it for about 9 years or so. I'd say in 20.
The Utah Homeless Services Board, you've been on that?
No,
Or
no, no.
you just,
I've just been part of the conversation about homelessness.
yeah,
That board didn't even exist in its current form until like a year and a half ago. Before that,
yeah.
it was
I
the
listened to 3. I'm really proud of myself. I sat through 3 hours each and listened to 3 of the meetings. And I'll tell you,
they're chunky.
those people deserve awards for sitting through those meetings.
They are.
It's very they're just really hard to keep your eyes open through.
I don't. I think I've been hanging on to this policy for so long that I
Yeah.
actually find it and what people say and what maybe what's being said between what's being said
Hmm. That's
pretty
probably it.
interesting.
If you know what they're presenting and you know the backstory,
Hmm.
that's probably because what Chief Red said was the key nugget I took away from the not the last one but the previous one. He said something like they only have enough resources to focus on one hotspot at a time. So he had a heat map. Therefore, that hotspot is going to constantly change with where they focus their resources,
Hmm.
and it's going to just completely change after 2 weeks of focusing on Pioneer Park, and it's going to go to down to
North
Liberty
Temple
Wells or North
or
Temple,
yeah.
and then you're going to a new hotspot, new hotspot. It's total whack-a-mole, and that's all they have the capability of doing because of there being such a thriving drug market and so many people who are still living on the streets. And do you have any ideas about how that situation's rectified? I'm like, good for you, Chief Red. I mean, you got a tough job.
Yeah, which problem? Or I mean, I think
Well,
you just named
how
about 5 intersecting
yeah,
problems.
they are 5 intersecting problems. But how you get people off the streets when all the shelters are full, all the overflow shelters were left open. I asked the cops about it actually yesterday. Where are the people supposed to go and how do we solve the problem if there's no more beds? What's
What
the,
answer did they give?
they said, oh, they're opening up more shelter space. They're opening up more beds. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we need to view the winter emergency situation, right?
Yeah, I guess the churches, I mean, the Code Blue deal with
Hmm.
the churches opening up, I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
I
but that's about safety for a really
Yeah, that's
vulnerable
and that's
population.
about Code Blue only when it drops below 32 degree. I think they changed it because they realized everybody's gonna die even below 40 degrees eventually sleeping outside.
And I mean, the flip side of that needs to happen too. And I know our state senator Todd Weiler can be quite amusing to follow on Twitter, and he can engage in a pretty aggressive way. But one of the things that I have really admired that he's done, and I hope he does this again, is he started a bill for Code Red days. That when the temperature is above 95 or 100 degrees, people need somewhere to go for the same reason,
Yeah,
right? Like our human bodies are not designed to deal with that kind of unrelenting heat.
yeah,
Um, so that bill didn't get through this past year, but I hope we recognize that a bill like that needs to get through.
yeah. I agree. Yeah, people cannot be left in conditions where they're going to die. And I think that the main thing that I've seen um, the faith community respond to is the material support of the homeless. The people come out with blankets and coats and food, and they supporting them on the street. And I think that's awesome. I think Utah is extremely compassionate. But the other side of the coin is a lot of these people, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of these people are holed up in their tent, they're camping, and they're using drugs all day, and they're getting all the material support, so they're not able to hit a rock bottom and make the decision, which is a life-changing decision that, okay, I'm about to die, I need to go get help because they're getting so much material support. And it's like I don't know the solution to that. It's like I don't know
I
because
mean, that's why you're so interested in interviewing people from the other side, right? Like you are interested in understanding when do people make that, like Kara Hallowell puts it, right? The switch point.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a reason why she named her.
I didn't know that was the reason. That actually makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think lots of us are interested in that question. And I think that question about when do you recognize that you need to make a change is something that anybody who has spent time thinking about how addiction works in the body and brain, it's something that lots of us are interested in. I told you before we started recording today, like I've gone back and read, biographies of Bill W. to understand, like, how did we come up with a model of Alcoholics Anonymous and peer support and people helping each other stay clean once they've made that decision. This isn't a new problem, but the substances that are out there now are just so much more addictive
and deadly.
Yeah.
I've said this before on the program, but I've covered the Magnolia Apartments for the last 4 years, and the tragedy of that place. I mean, 20 people dead. A third of the original residents died of drug overdose because they are not going to ever kick anybody out because of their addiction. They're never going to say, this is sober living. You got to use, you're going to get out, because where are they going to go?
I mean, part of that's not like an individual decision necessarily that some providers made, right? Like part of that was driven by federal policy.
Yeah,
the federal
exactly.
policy about
Yep.
housing first.
Yep,
And
exactly.
it's
Their hands are completely tied. And so I think I got pushback from the road home. I couldn't get Michelle Flynn to ever come on the program because I point that out. The residents are all using drugs and they're dropping dead all the time, but that's the facts. Those are just facts. And the residents who invited me into their apartment and spoke to me in one of the apartments, they said, this is a horrible place to live because everybody's addicted. There's psychotic behavior because people have been using fentanyl so long that their brain is deteriorating, where they think they're in a horror movie all night, and we got to listen to somebody screaming all night long. And that's the reality of housing first. I mean, it sounds wonderful. Like, let's give them housing first, work on your problems later. But if you're sitting there trying to sleep and you want to start a job, how are you ever going to get a good night's sleep with somebody screaming bloody murder all night long?
Yeah, I think there is a body of evidence that supports housing first, but a lot of those studies were done with social workers in New York City in the 1980s. And so I wonder, to what extent, if we really look at intervention versus no intervention, would we get some of those same results today, knowing what with fentanyl on the street, instead of looking at, alcohol
Yeah, you
as the
think
main
they
addictive
would do
substance?
studies like that? Because all the people from TOSA I've had on the program, they hit a hard rock bottom. It was like this Jeffrey Kaiser Plant, who's one of the teachers at the village. His rock bottom was he got stabbed 14 times, 7 times in the face. The lady next to him got stabbed 40 times and she died. And he suffered in a coma for 5 days. And then he's like, maybe it's time I change my life and not be a drug addict anymore. And then he went and sat at the bench in the other side academy, and then the same thing with Dylan Gibson. He was flatlined. He's one of the coaches at the other side academy from a drug overdose. He was left for dead outside of St. Vincent's, and his brother had this feeling of intuition that he was in trouble, and it just happened to pick him up right in the front, right when he was beginning to go and fade out. So it's like it's a sad thing that
Yeah, what does it mean that it takes flatlining or being stabbed 14 times
yeah
for people to make that? Like, that's we need some more solutions out there, because it's so inhumane that that's what it takes for people to.
yeah because
It
nobody should
shows
have to go through that.
it shows the power of, what these drugs can do to people's brains.
Yeah.
It's
And I don't think it's said enough that when you are on the drugs, all these people understand it. you know, you have your hierarchy of needs, the famous chart, Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mm-hmm.
Food and shelter are way down at the bottom.
It gets
Drugs
rearranged. Yeah.
is like 3/4 of that pyramid, and you will do anything, including rob all of your loved ones to get drugs, including sell your body to get drugs. And so to allow people to just stay outside and camp, I used to be in the camp of believing that that was the better, more compassionate way to go. But if somebody is that drug addicted, where there's no hierarchy of needs other than I need drugs now and I will do anything it takes to get them, I think that person needs to be in prison or jail. And I've taken that opinion and I've been attacked for taking it because it doesn't sound compassionate. But if it's your brother and it's between him dying from a drug overdose or him having his life saved because he's locked up behind bars, I'm going to choose locked up behind bars.
And we hear from parents of people in that cycle who beg for that, right? Like, what crime does my son or daughter need to commit to be committed?
Yeah, the parents come forward and beg the
Yeah.
police.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking. You know, but we've been here a few times as a country, right? Thinking about like this is touching the whole national conversation about involuntary commitment, right?
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder, you know, if Ken Kesey hadn't published One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, would we be exactly where we are now?
Yeah, that actually, when I saw that movie, and then I remember visiting that old Shriner Psych Hospital at the top of the avenues.
It sticks with you.
Yeah, you're like, holy cow, these people were locked up.
Yeah.
And that's nuts. We used to do that.
Yeah.
But then you realize the alternative is probably for most people who have the psychotic breakdown and drug addict, the alternative is going to be probably death. I want to have if they're my loved one, I want them in a psych ward. I want them where they're going to be safe.
It's hard to say, right? Because I think anybody can point to examples from the news or from history of people having been horribly mistreated at these institutions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we are right to entertain strong skepticism of, but would it be safe, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't think they should go there to get a lobotomy. I think we could
say
that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm glad. I think we can. That's a good.
Yeah, that would be a good thing
agreement
to say no to.
Yeah,
but I think if they are getting
people used to give those out of compassion too. Remember, yeah. I mean the Kennedys, right? One of the most privileged families in America had one of their family members lobotomized out of compassion.
No kidding. I did not know that.
Yeah. So we probably should be skeptical about everything that we've put compassion on, that label.
You know, I was lucky to have Sim Gill on this program, and we were talking about JRI. I'm sure you heard that. So this was back when we decided.
Why don't you define it for the listeners?
Good idea. Justice Reinvestment Initiative, right?
Mm-hmm. I thought it was reform.
I thought it was reform too, but I think it was investment. I got to find out now. JRI, Justice Reinvestment Initiative. Justice Reinvestment Initiative. I thought it was Resource Initiative too, but
now we know.
Yeah, and that was the idea that why not be more compassionate to criminals? Why not be less jail time? Let's enhance public safety through data-driven approaches. It all sounds great.
I mean, I think it's worth it asking the question of like, what is the purpose of incarceration, right? Yeah. Like first of all, incarceration is super expensive. We should be asking the question for that reason, but we should also be asking the question from a civil liberties perspective. What is the purpose of incarceration?
Yeah. And at what point does your being involuntary committed or getting an excessive prison sentence violate your civil liberties? or getting locked up because you're just camping in a park because you're addicted to drugs. Does that violate your civil liberties if you're public camping? The Supreme Court ruled on that. And I think it was 2 years ago, and they said cities can enforce the no camping laws, even if the shelters are full. I think that, that's a tough one, because if they literally have no other place to go, no couch they can crash on because they've burned all the bridges of all their friends and their family members, if they've been stealing and from all their family members and they got to go to jail because there's no place for them to go. You know what? If that's the case, great. I mean, not great, but I guess that's the only recourse. Put them into jail for the night. It could save their lives. But if it's an elderly senior who just got priced out of the housing market and they got to spend a night or two in the park, of course, that's a completely different situation. And there's got to be some discernment between those kind of situations. And so,
Yeah, I'm incredibly uncomfortable with just the pragmatic logistics of that.
yeah,
It doesn't, you can't square that circle.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
And we cannot be a purely litigious society or judicial society and believe this is the law. We're going to enforce it always and forever, because there's always going to be situations where you got to have compassion for the human side of things.
Well, not just that, just the basic math. We're arresting you because you have nowhere to go. We can't do that. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
Sorry, Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think I still probably tip a little bit more on the line of it's a city's responsibility to warehouse the homeless. That term was used to justify the demolition of the road home. But if they have to be warehoused, if they have to be put somewhere, there's got to be a place where they can go to, other than a jail cell.
Last night, for some reason, I don't know if it was in preparation for this conversation or just thinking about, the history of homelessness policy in our city, and thinking about, one of our great public servants is putting his name back out there to rerun for Congress, I believe. I was going back and reading the public accounts that Ben McAdams spent, a night in the downtown road home and on the street outside the road home. And I know he didn't do it as a political stunt. He did it to try to make a truly informed decision about what needed to happen to that space. I'm really grateful that he did that, and I think he probably put himself at some risk doing that.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I actually thought about that. I was with my kid, and we went to the Midvale Family Shelter because we were hearing all these rumors about it. And I said, I just want to go look at the sleeping arrangements before we decide if we want to stay here. I was acting. And they said, nope, you got to sign up right now, and then you'll get your bed assigned to you, and then you can see what it's like. And I was like, crap. I would not want to stay here with my kid if I don't have to. I mean, if I had to, of course I would. But yeah, that was really putting himself out there. So do you think that what he experienced led to the demolition of the road home?
It certainly helped. I think he's so well respected on both sides of the aisle that if he'd come out strongly against its demolition, I think lots of folks would have listened.
Yeah, and it was awful. I did go through the road home before it was demolished, and I saw these people with MRSA, which was an awful, awful, very, very contagious skin disease.
The flesh-eating bacteria?
Yeah, it's awful.
That's very scary.
Yeah, they get these black sort of little marks, and then it inflates into pussy, scab-looking big nodules all over their body, and it was going around like crazy in like 2000 and, well, it must have been 2014-ish.
That's super scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really bad. This guy showed me his legs and he had it all over the place. I went around with a homeless guy for a couple of days named Ben, and then I went back to find him and I could not find him anywhere. I think he died. He and I did a video about him and the situation before Operation Rio Grande in 2016. And yeah, I mean, but couldn't they somehow tear it down and build it again in the same place? I just don't get. That was a perfect place for a homeless shelter in terms of services.
I
What's
think
your opinion
I
about
think
that?
again we're talking about whose civil liberties, right? Um, when we think about where we've concentrated resources in the city and access to public green spaces, what do we think about? Um, is it violating civil liberties if a few hundred people or 1,000 people won't go to Pioneer Park because they're uncomfortable? Well, probably not. That doesn't sound exactly like a violation of civil liberties, but it does mean that our green spaces are serving a totally different purpose than for what they're designed. And then
Hmm.
it means that neighborhoods don't have access to what they feel or they won't use safe green spaces.
Yeah,
That's a weird, hard problem, and it's going to have long-term ramifications on city planning.
it is such a hard problem
When
because
I'm going to
go no, go
tell
ahead.
an anecdote and I'll let you go. But one of the bringing it way back around to Ballpark Next, one of the things that folks advocated for, myself included, um, was more green space because there's a demonstrable shortage in that area of the city of, public park acres per 1,000 people. And our neighborhood is only getting more dense, so that disparity is going to be exacerbated.
Hmm.
But the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Agency, formerly known as the RDA, said in a public meeting, a public hearing, or the city council work session, that they were concerned about public safety and maintenance costs for expanding green space in the
Hmm.
neighborhood. And that doesn't feel like a good foregone conclusion for use of green space or for how we conceive of planning new green spaces in Salt Lake City, that we can't have them because of public safety and maintenance costs.
Yeah, yeah, and there is a big cost, man. I was at Pioneer Park yesterday. I kind of wanted to prepare for what my take was on it, and there are cop cars everywhere. And I talked to the police, and I'm just like, "Is this now the new hot spot you guys are working on?" They're like, "Yep, this is it." And there was like three in the park, three around the park. There was a active investigation going on. These one guys did not want to talk or did not want me to use my camera. I'll show the footage on the edited version of this podcast. Um, but it's like they really want that green space to be for residents, which I think's great. A lot of residents around there. And but at the other side of the coin is where are these people going to go and what is it they're actually doing there? Are they doing drug trafficking or sex trafficking? Are they just trying to, hang out and live? It's a
Right.
really tough, nuanced.
If
uh,
you're just trying to hang out and live, then being driven out of the park is demonstrably wrong, right? Even if it
mhm.
might make some folks uncomfortable.
Yeah, and everybody in that park was on edge. Usually, I can go to that park and talk to all the homeless people. Like Jack and I went, it's like everybody's cool to talk to. All of the people who were there just day camping, they were on edge because I was just like going with my phone, showing this one like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Are you trying to do something with that video?" I was like, "I'm just in the park showing what's going on in the park." And I asked her if she wanted an interview, and she's like, "No," and she just went off. But you can tell they're getting harassed. They are the problem. They're identified as the problem. Where are they gonna go? What are they gonna do? I don't know. Um, should they have someplace to go? Like, should they have a brother, sister, aunt, uncle? I always ask that. Don't you have any other place? No. Usually, a lot of them are like they don't have any family. I think that's the number one cause of homelessness that people don't recognize is most people who I talk to on the streets don't have a family connection, don't have a couch to crash on, and they really just need a community. They need peers.
I mean, that's what folks at TOSA, the other side, say, right?
Yeah.
That the cause of homelessness is lack of community and lack of connection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, man, thanks for coming on, Amy. Was there anything else you wanted to cover?
Gosh, I don't know. We got pretty far away from my election, right? We got pretty deep into some of the
Yeah.
stuff that we both have spent a long time thinking about, and in pretty deep ways, right?
I really do appreciate Solutions Utah and the work you guys do there. I love Jan. She just like gives me tips on things, and Scott, he's been on the program and he's awesome. And yeah, so can you talk a little bit about Solutions Utah and what they're all about?
A little bit. I think I don't know if I like represent the majority views on that board all the time, but I find it really interesting and helpful to get into rooms where there's some disagreement. I think disagreement and conflicting views can be really productive for the public policy space.
Yeah.
Maybe we should seek disagreement a little more frequently.
Yeah, debate.
But uh going back, I thought it was funny. I think before I joined the board of then Pioneer Park Coalition, I was in media publicly disagreeing with them because there was talk of opening another emergency shelter. Actually, this happened twice. There was talk of opening another emergency shelter in the Ballpark neighborhood. First, in 2019, they proposed it for, or it was proposed, I don't know who the they is, at a former state liquor store on Main Street at about 1450 South Main Street.
Oh man.
And that at that time I worked with then council member Aaron Mendenhall to write a letter about why that would be an inappropriate concentration of homeless resources in a neighborhood that already was carrying a significant burden of resources.
Was that before the Gail Miller was open?
No, I mean it was almost exactly the same time.
Oh wow.
The Gail
They
Miller
wanted to
opened
have
in
two
fall.
right next to each other.
You got it. The Gail Miller opened in fall 2019. So we were saying like, but what happened to, the last time there was a public process about where shelter should go? We agreed to host, we as a neighborhood agreed not to push back too hard, and it's like, yep, we'll carry our fair share. But so it was very surprising when it was proposed that that space be used as an emergency shelter. And we just had a rash of violent crime in that. Within a block of that area, there'd been 4 homicides in under a year within a block of that space. And so that was another reason why I was saying, like, why would we put a vulnerable population where we already know we have a big problem with public safety? That seems like a very bad recipe for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So whatever was happening stopped happening, and that was great. But then in 2021, it happened again. The VOA Detox Center on Brooklyn Avenue, that's at about 1000 South, in between 2nd West and 3rd West, was proposed for use as an emergency shelter. And that's a block and a half away from the Youth Homeless Resource Center. And we said, hold the phone. Again, you're concentrating resources in the neighborhood with less political capital than other neighborhoods. You're putting a very at-risk population really close to youth homelessness, and that's the kind of homelessness that we hope the most that folks can exit.
And those are the ones who get preyed upon.
And those are the ones who get preyed upon. Yeah.
When the more seasoned homeless folks who show up, as we've reported on.
Right. And so that was fall 2021. We had a public meeting during the pandemic, so it was online. There were 150 people signed on to Zoom, very upset. And we were also experiencing a pretty big spike in violent crime at the time, as in every American city, right? It was attributable to factors to do with the pandemic and things that we still don't quite understand. But it seemed like a bad idea to
Yeah.
put it in the midst of those pre-existing forces. So right after that was when I decided, like, I need to start participating. I need to not be in a reactive mode. I need to be proactive. I need to be at the table in the homelessness conversation, not just attending city council meetings, but like I need to pay attention to these state level boards who are making these strategic discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's how I got involved with Solutions Utah, then
Nice.
Pioneer Park Coalition. I think sometimes I'm still the odd man out on some conversations, maybe about traffic calming or something like that. But I think it's important to be at the table as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, a civic engagement, it's like we started the program. It's
Yeah, we didn't
it's
talk
it's
about anything spooky at all, other than One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and lobotomy. Those are spooky.
yeah. Yeah. I think that what I think is spooky, this is what kind of inspired the thumbnail of the podcast, is if we don't get involved, there's going to be a power vacuum, and there's always special interests and corrupt politicians who want to occupy that power vacuum and take advantage of the fact that citizens and residents are not engaged and don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And if we're too occupied by our TikTok and Instagram feeds about hating Trump or hating the Democrats, either one, we're gonna totally miss the boat on what's going on in our backyard, and we're not going to be able to know how we get involved when the problems get worse and worse. And so I look at how we can regain our sovereignty of our communities, and I think the easiest way is to shop local, like support the local mom and pop grocery store, restaurant. Go visit your local library, get involved, see what's hanging on the boards at your library or your rec center, and walk around. Like, I think a lot of people just think walking is stupid. And I think it's a great way to kind of just like get involved, is just walking around. And but that's why we publish Utah Stories magazine. It's like all the ways you can support local Utah. And this is our brunch guide. If you're, as it gets colder, people want to find the very best local brunches. Um,
I'm
you,
assuming Piper Down is featured in there as one of the very best vegan brunches. I've
oh,
heard it's pretty.
we did not contact them.
I've heard it's pretty good, friend.
Really?
Yeah.
Ritz Diner, Provisions. That's my favorite. We go to Provisions. Uncle Jeffy's is awesome. They're new to Holiday. So, but what other ways would you recommend people can get more civically engaged and involved than those ways I just pointed out?
Go find your local community council, join their Facebook group or their Instagram page, and figure out, what's the zoning conversation to be had. I will say, to really be involved in some of these discussions, you have to study these issues for a while. Like, it is not glamorous necessarily. If you are not a planner, an architect, or whatever, trying to figure out zoning is it can be a little dry.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of those things are, the issues that build cities.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or don't build cities, as you pointed out, right?
Yeah.
Lot sizes are too small to finance.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's got to be a solution.
Yep.
Yeah.
But during the incredibly rapid fire 45 days, try going up to the hill. It's not, you say meetings behind closed doors. Most of those doors are open, and you can go and sit and listen to Health and Human Services or another committee meeting of your choosing. And it can be fascinating.
Yeah.
It's remarkably accessible to the average person who wants to be involved. And I didn't know that until
I think with a little context, it can be fascinating. Like when you understand the key figures on the Utah Homeless Services Board, and you kind of know their special take on it already and what they're pushing for, it actually is quite interesting to get through it. And just get those little tiny mini toothpicks to put on your eyeballs like you see in Bugs Bunny. Just keep your eyes open and try to keep listening without falling asleep. And I think it's
I think those are a violation of civil liberties, friend.
I've only seen those in Bugs Bunny. My brother and I tried to make those after we saw that cartoon. That can't be good for your eyes.
You've
We did crazy
repeatedly
stuff.
mentioned things that have made my inner medical educator die inside. Walking is boring. Put toothpicks in your eyes. Like, oh, no
Yeah,
animals were harmed in the making of this podcast.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, don't try that at home,
Mm-mm.
folks. Don't do that. I'm kidding. But yeah, I'd love to get your comments. I'd love to get comments from the viewers. The last thing I think you can do to get civically engaged, this is the lowest voter turnout type of election coming up November 4th.
Municipal only.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
8 to 10% turnout typically. Come out and vote, right?
I think I saw that a quarter have been returned now. Still heartbreakingly low.
Really?
And now the barrier's a little higher, right? Just putting your ballot in your mailbox
Yeah,
right now
that's not that
will,
hard.
well, don't do that anymore. Don't put your ballot in your mailbox because the postmark date is no longer what's important.
Oh, you got to
It
show
needs
up
to
now.
physically get in the box or you can vote day of.
Can you go to the mail drop places to take your ballot?
The official ballot mail drop,
Okay.
like the one
Those are always at the post office, right?
my preferred one is the city and county building.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's pretty easily accessible. I believe, and there is one at the main library as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't speak for post office. I can't envision them at the moment.
Yeah, I think I did do that the last election, the holiday post office. But the other question our listener had finally, can we preserve historic architecture? Is that something people can get engaged with? I think you can. Go, most places have a historic preservation society
We have
chapter.
Preservation Utah. Those
Yeah.
are, yeah. I've literally gone and helped sorted bricks at the Fifth Ward Meeting House, which, as we all know, was partially demolished Easter 2024, I think it was. Right?
Mm,
Do you remember that?
no.
The Fifth Ward Meeting House on Third West and about um, just north of Ruby Snap Cookies.
Oh,
Does that
really?
does that ring a bell for you?
I think I heard it before it was demolished and I lost track of it, but you could sort the bricks from the building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's being lovingly restored by somebody who wants to, let's bring it back again, use it for affordable recovery housing
That's
for
cool.
people. It is cool.
That's really neat.
Yeah, it's a guy started.
That's very seldom a happy ending to a historic building.
Well, it's still on the way, right? But
Mhm.
he started a nonprofit called Salt Gives. His name is Skylar Baird, and he's very interested in doing work in that space, which
That's
I
awesome
applaud.
to hear a win
Yeah,
because the Utah Theater was the last one I followed. Very sad. It's just a giant gaping hole in Main Street. Nothing, no plans for that right now, right? The Heinz uh, Corporation, not to be confused with the ketchup, owns it. And it's not going to be a ketchup factory. That would be cool, but they're not going to build it, right?
I haven't kept up with that one. It's
Uh,
sort of I agree. We need an update on what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah. That was really sad because there was a strong push to save it. They demolished it. Oops, whoops. We didn't get our funding. We're not going to build anything there. Just again, I don't I don't personally dislike any political leaders downtown, but I don't like that the RDA and spearheaded by the mayor demolished that building before they knew for 100% certain that the building plans were approved and going to be built. Like, why would you do that?
There's building plans and then there's financing, right? And it
Mhm.
cannot be denied. And I'm not looking to absolve anybody of anything, but I would say that it cannot be denied that the landscape of financing any kind of construction has shifted dramatically in the past 4 to 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Like I would be hard pressed to explain that landscape very easily, but getting financing is harder than it used to be.
Yeah, I don't think we have many shovel-ready projects. I think most of them are under construction. There's not a lot of new. There's not going to be a whole lot of new construction until interest rates go down significantly, and
that's going to hurt housing affordability at every level.
yeah, actually, going to be being able to build equity in a home. I like the governor's made it an initiative, but I talked to Tim from the Other Side Academy. Do you see any more tiny home villages on the horizon? He proposed it to the governor. Let's do this. We'll help you. And he's like, doesn't know if the governor is going to want to do it, or if, because it's mostly up to cities, not states, the state to do it. But hopefully affordable housing comes back, and hopefully you can sit at the table and promote the ideas that you champion.
Well, I hope a lot of folks also stay really engaged in the conversation about the campus, not just the homeless campus, not just will it happen or won't it happen, but we have a few recent learned lessons about how much resources it's going to take for it to be successful. And so to what extent we can keep building the political capital and the conversation about, like, we have screwed this up before in the not too distant past. The Utah Homelessness Council has called the homeless resource centers a failure. Okay, let's take lessons learned from that, because they're only 6 years old.
Yeah.
Surely there are people who've been part of the conversation for long enough that they can take that to how we execute this project.
Well, Wayne is moving out. Tyler's moving in. You obviously love that, I think, or you're happy that Tyler's going to be in charge.
I see Tyler showing up for discussions at every level. He's not just a one-track guy. He shows up for conversations about, a couple months ago, I saw him at the Crossroads Urban Poverty Summit, where he gave a talk. I see him show up for bills on, like, school lunches for folks who can't pay for them. I think he thinks about systems in a way that's going to be very helpful for this role. I think Utah would be well served if he becomes governor one day.
Wow. Yeah, he's a young guy. That would be awesome.
It would be awesome.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like he's part of the good old boys club yet. Let's hope he remains that way.
He's a working class guy, right?
He's a cop. I love it. Cop. That would be.
So he sees a lot of real problems people have, and I think that's one of the reasons why he has such a wide appetite for solutions at every level.
Yeah. Well, we better leave it there. I thank you again for coming on, Amy.
My pleasure.
Your insight into these issues is great. I think your involvement in your community is making a difference. I've seen.
I'm going to play this for my mom.
I've seen the Ballpark neighborhood improve. It looks great. You used to see zombie drug addicts all over the place, and high crime and criminals, and now it's looking actually quite good there.
Thank you. So. We still see vulnerable people camping in park strips from time to time, and we need to figure out how to get those people some resources.
Yeah.
But there's a tension there.
Yeah. Well, keep up the good work.
Thanks. Thank you, Richard.
All right. And if you want to be a bigger part of Utah Stories, go out, subscribe to our free digital newsletter. It's utahstories.com. There you can support our journalism. Utah Stories magazine, $5 a month. If you become a member, you get Faces of Utah magazine. This is our Utah business, our entrepreneur success guide, and the people who are literally changing the face of Utah. You can pick this one up. All guests of the program get a free copy. So that's yours.
Oh, why?
Actually, that's got a coffee stain on it. I'll give you this one.
So generous. Thank you.
There you go. And you can get your copy too by visiting utahstories.com or thefaceofutah.com. Like, subscribe, share this show, smash the like button, leave us a comment. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Clark's Auto is Utah's premier independent Subaru mechanic and auto shop. Check them out at clarksauto.com and on the back of Utah Stories magazine.